The morning started like any other disaster in my life. Two sheriff's deputies stood in front of my grandfather's 1978 Airstream, their hands resting casually on their duty belts. Grandpa Harold, 82 years old, shirtless and sporting a sunburn that could rival a lobster, was roasting a bratwurst over his camp stove like he didn't have a care in the world. "Sir, we received a complaint that you're squatting on this property," the younger deputy said, clearly uncomfortable with the whole situation. Harold just grinned, pointed his tongs at a metal plaque bolted to a nearby tree, and flipped his bratwurst. The plaque read, "Leased in perpetuity to Juniper County Parks Department." Then he turned to the scowling woman beside the officers, Loretta Vale, our neighborhood self-appointed dictator. "Ma'am," he said with that mischievous twinkle in his eye, "you just tried to evict the county's own property steward. How's that going to look in your next HOA newsletter?" The look on Loretta's face was priceless. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. And I swear I saw one of the deputies trying to hide a smirk. Let me back up a bit. I'm Logan Bixby, a software engineer who inherited more than just social anxiety from my family. I also inherited a small lakeside lot from my grandfather, Harold. It wasn't much to look at, unpaved, mostly unused, surrounded by pine trees, and overlooking Crystal Lake. But it was peaceful and, more importantly, it was ours. Every summer, Grandpa Harold would pull up his vintage Airstream and live his best life. His days consisted of grilled meat, crossword puzzles, and a 6 p.m. whiskey sour. The man had retirement figured out better than anyone I knew. Enter Loretta Vale, the HOA president of Pine Brush Bluffs. She was an ex-real estate agent who described herself as a stickler for structure and silent streets. Translation: she was the kind of person who measured grass height with a ruler and complained about wind chimes being too musical. Loretta had it out for our lot from day one. Her main complaint: it didn't have a house on it. According to her twisted logic, this made it undeveloped, uncontained, and unsavory. She said this with such conviction you'd think an empty lot was somehow a threat to national security. The harassment started with letters, on official HOA letterhead, of course. The first one screamed, "NO structure, NO rights," in bold capital letters. The second claimed, "temporary dwellings breed permanent decline." I tried explaining that my grandfather had been camping there every summer for the past 20 years. She wasn't interested in history or tradition. Then came the fines, $50 per day for illegal camping. When I protested at the next HOA meeting, she cited a new bylaw that had apparently been passed during an emergency quorum. I later found out this emergency meeting had taken place at her backyard wine tasting party with only her 3 closest allies in attendance. Things escalated when she cornered Harold during his morning walk. I wasn't there, but Mrs. Peterson from 2 streets over gave me the play-by-play. Loretta marched right up to him, index finger extended like a weapon, and told him to roll it up and roll it out. She actually said those words, like she was directing traffic at a food truck festival. Big mistake. Huge, actually. Harold came back from his walk with a grin that could only mean trouble for someone. He shuffled into his Airstream and emerged with a manila envelope that looked like it had survived multiple decades and at least one coffee spill. "Logan, my boy," he said, handing it to me. "Sometimes the best defense is good paperwork." Inside was a lease agreement from 2003. As I read through it, my jaw dropped. The document transferred temporary land use rights to the Juniper County Parks Department in exchange for tax offsets and historical preservation status. The kicker: it granted Harold, as the volunteer land steward, perpetual seasonal use for rustic enjoyment and property maintenance. Turns out Grandpa Harold had spent years helping restore the nearby hiking trails after a massive storm system destroyed them. His volunteer work had saved the county thousands of dollars. In return, they gave him this sweet deal, a quiet, perpetual lease for his summer camping adventures. I immediately scanned the document and forwarded it to Loretta with a carefully worded email. I made sure to CC the county commissioner, the Parks Department, and every single HOA board member whose email I could find. Professional courtesy, you know. Loretta's response was swift and predictable. Instead of admitting defeat like a rational person, she doubled down and called the sheriff's department. She claimed we were fraudulently impersonating county officials and disrupting the peace of the neighborhood. The woman had a gift for creative accusations. Which brings us back to that morning with the deputies. After Harold pointed out the plaque and mentioned the lease, the lead deputy made a quick call to the county legal office. 20 minutes of increasingly uncomfortable silence followed, with Loretta tapping her foot and checking her phone every 30 seconds. Then something beautiful happened. The deputy's phone buzzed with an email from the county attorney. Turns out Loretta's own complaint email had been forwarded to them, the one where she demanded the removal of an unauthorized camper from county-affiliated property. The county lawyers were not amused. They sent back a strongly worded response citing their easement rights and reminding her that interfering with a county leaseholder could qualify as harassment, trespassing, and potentially even criminal interference with government operations. They also noted that any HOA bylaws attempting to supersede county agreements were null and void. The sheriff's deputies left with apologies to Harold and what I swear were sympathetic looks in my direction. Loretta stood there, her face cycling through various shades of red and purple. She stormed off without another word, her heels clicking angry staccato beats on the pavement. The HOA board was blindsided by the whole fiasco. Several members reached out to me privately, expressing shock that Loretta had been rewriting bylaws at informal gatherings. 3 board members resigned within the week after learning about the sangria-fueled emergency quorum. Apparently, changing neighborhood rules required actual meetings with proper notice, not just whoever could make it to happy hour. An emergency board meeting was called for the following Tuesday. The community center was packed, standing room only. Word had spread about Loretta's attempted eviction of a county volunteer, and residents were not happy. Harold showed up wearing his best Hawaiian shirt and brought his own lawn chair, setting up in the front row with a thermos I suspected contained something stronger than coffee. The meeting was a massacre. Resident after resident stood up to share their own stories of Loretta's overreach, the woman who got fined for having bird feeders that were too colorful, the family whose kids couldn't use sidewalk chalk because it was deemed property defacement, the elderly couple who received a violation for their garden gnome facing the wrong direction. When it came time to vote, Loretta was removed from her position by a margin of 47-3. The 3 votes in her favor came from her wine-tasting cronies, who looked increasingly uncomfortable as the meeting progressed. But the county wasn't done. The next week, officials arrived to install a historical marker on our property. It was a beautiful bronze plaque that read, "This site honors Harold Bixby's dedication to trail restoration and environmental stewardship. This land is preserved for rustic enjoyment and shall remain free from excessive regulation." The best part, as the current HOA president, a position Loretta had been demoted from but not removed from the board entirely, she was required to approve all new signage in the neighborhood. She had to sign off on a monument to her own defeat. Her signature on that approval form was so shaky it looked like she'd signed it during an earthquake. The county also sent her a bill for $2,400 to cover the cost of their legal team's time responding to her frivolous and harassing complaint against a recognized county volunteer. She paid it within the week, probably to avoid further embarrassment. As for her new role, the board, in what I can only assume was an act of poetic justice, appointed her as mailbox maintenance coordinator. It was a position they created just for her, involving the thrilling responsibility of ensuring all mailboxes met the neighborhood standard she loved so much. The catch? She had to personally inspect each one and deliver any violation notices by hand, rain or shine. Last I heard, she was still trudging through the neighborhood with her measuring tape and clipboard, delivering handwritten notes about mailbox heights being half an inch too low. Harold waves at her every time she passes our lot, always with a bratwurst in one hand and a whiskey sour in the other. The woman who once terrorized our neighborhood with her petty power trips was reduced to measuring mailbox posts in the rain, all because she didn't bother to check who actually owned the land she was trying to control. Her fine came to $2,400, and her face when the judge read the amount looked like she'd swallowed a lemon whole.